Hello and welcome to the Artellectuals podcast. On today's episode, we will be featuring the best freelance music hustler I know. And he's also super kind and memorable. He's one of the busiest musicians, literally speed walking from gig to gig and squeezing in as many as 4 gigs a day. I met Clyde several times within the freelance community. We would bump into each other at orchestra rehearsals, operas, and church services all around the New York region. The thing that struck me most about Clyde was how busy he was, constantly running from one gig marathon to another. In today's episode, you will hear about what inspired Clyde to turn into a gig master, the steps he took to get so many gigs, and his word of advice to the aspiring hustlers in the audience. You can find more information about Clyde on his Instagram page at @TrumpetClyde. Before we continue with this episode, please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you're on YouTube, or leave a rating and review if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts once you've listened to this episode. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, I am honored to present today's podcast with Clyde. We're going to be talking about, your the things that you had trouble with at the beginning of your career, because right now before this coronavirus situation, you have been like the gig master. I remember you jumping from 10 gigs a day or something ridiculous. So
yeah, things were going quite well when this all started. I was probably, after Fiddler, I was probably at the peak of my career, really. And I was getting back into freelancing and doing a lot of cool things. And then, here we are. Actually, that weekend, I think it was the second weekend of March, I was supposed to play Lincoln Center for the first time in a few years. And I was so,
sorry, man.
I was so upset. It's okay. It happens, happens to all of us. So it is what it is. But yeah, I was in a really good place and everyone got the rug pulled out from under them. So we all have to adjust in our own ways. But, since then I've been doing some virtual performance stuff, a lot of classes and master classes and instructional videos and things like that. So, there's still work to be had and I'm still getting some work, which is nice.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. I'm glad that you're still you're thinking outside the box and being productive, because a lot of people just want to sit down and lay down and not do anything, which is pretty easy to do these days, right?
No, it's crazy that I'm hearing about so many musicians who are just putting down their instruments and not playing for a month at a time. And I can't fathom that.
Yeah.
I don't
been playing a lot.
Playing. Yeah, I can't imagine going for a month without playing. That's literal insanity to me. But everyone processes things differently, so.
Right. I think people shouldn't have the pressure to feel like they need to be creative at this time anyway.
Right. Of course. Go
on.
I was just gonna say, people. Yeah, you're right. People shouldn't feel pressured to make art, but for some of us. Making art is what we love to do. And for some people, it's a career and a job. For some people, it's both. So, everyone's going to take this differently. And I hope not too many musicians lose their will to make music through all this.
I'm sure they'll get out of it in a positive light.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing a lot of cool things happening now. So in a way, maybe this will also make people they'll continue doing these projects in the future. Virtual kind of concerts and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be cool to backtrack a little bit, just give a little bit of foundational background of your past and where you came from, how you were influenced, things like that. And I guess keep it brief, just to get an idea who's Clyde.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, and I've never left. Much like you, I believe.
Yep.
Yep.
Brooklyn native. Yep.
Yeah. And my first real interactions with music, my mom and dad are both from Caribbean countries. My mom's from Guyana, my dad's from St. Kitts. And my dad listens to a lot of soca and calypso. And both of those styles of music have a lot of use of horns, trumpets, and saxes. And so I was hearing that as soon as I was, out of the hospital and coming home. So I think that music probably influenced my decision to play a brass instrument. Because it's very upbeat, feel good music. And so it always produced a good response in me. But after that, I started actually playing in fourth grade at PS 20 in Fort Greene. They started a band program that year. And they had us write down our choices on an index card. And my first two choices were actually clarinet and flute, only because the brass instruments seemed really heavy and I didn't want to lug them around.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what everyone tells me with the cello, right? Why didn't you choose flute? Right.
Right. But, I got over that quickly. They put a trumpet in my hand and I loved it immediately. I didn't play in fifth grade. My family moved around a bit. We always stayed in Brooklyn. But I went to a magnet school in fifth grade that didn't have a band program. And then in sixth grade, I went to Philippa Schuyler Middle School in Bushwick or Ridgewood. And they had a band program, so I started there. Started up again. And then in seventh grade, I went to Hunter High School, and they had a decent band program. And, I was able to make the most of what they had to offer. And find a niche with other musical friends there. And then it's funny because at the end of high school, I wanted to go into biology. I wanted to work for a pharmaceutical company, which is hilarious to think about now, right?
Uh-huh.
But I decided to go into music. I said to myself, I can always go back to school if I want to.
Good choice.
Yeah, right. But it's interesting. I got to college, and after being the best trumpet player in my high school, I got to college and I was the worst player in the studio by far. I think that was the fire under me that I needed to really start cultivating a dedication to practice and making myself a better musician. And from then on, it was entering the freelance world, and I haven't looked back since.
Amazing. It's interesting that you mentioned that you kind of, it's an interesting perspective when you're put in a place and you're like the best one. And then like next year, you're just like, you have to start from the bottom up. I kind of had that experience as well. And I mean, you think that it was also a good experience also being the best one in the school? Like, did that also help you gain your, I don't know, self-esteem in terms of a player?
Oh, absolutely. I used to have pretty bad stage fright, actually.
Oh.
When I was my first Hunter concert in seventh grade. You started seventh grade at Hunter. My first concert, I was a bowl of jelly going on stage, and with 4, 5, or 6 concerts a year, I got over that. And by the time I got to junior and senior year, I was performing solo pieces. I did Quiet City for my last concert at Hunter, and I had all the confidence in the world. So that definitely helped. If I could go back and tell myself a few things, I would tell myself to practice the way I practiced in college, in high school.
Right.
Yeah. But we all have different journeys, and so I needed to go through that adoration I received in high school from everybody and all the praise I got. I needed to go through that before I could get to college and realize that I needed to work on my playing. So I guess I developed the confidence, and then I developed the willingness to actually put in the work.
Got it. Awesome. Where did you go to college, by the way?
Queens
College. Great. That's a great school. And you just completed your bachelor's there, and then you went to the gig scene after that.
Yeah.
Great. Can you talk about how you basically got into the gig scene?
Well, so my first paying gig was with Kevin Blanc, and he's now the jazz band director at LaGuardia, and he taught at Hunter before that, and we've remained good friends since then. And he took a few of us, and we played in front of the Lincoln Center fountain, and he paid us all out of his own pocket. He wanted us to experience the feeling of being properly compensated for your work. And I'm super grateful that he did that. After that, it was really my connections with ISO, which is the Interschool Orchestras of New York. They're a youth orchestra. So my connections through that cultivated my network. So I started to work with a lot of those conductors. And then once I wasn't a student anymore, and my friends who came up with me were doing all kinds of things professionally, I would start to work with them as well. And from there, you just meet different people around the city, and you try to make sure those people remember who you are. And so I've been able to build a pretty good career from that.
Awesome. How much would you say that your personality has also attributed to your success with the gig scene? In terms of you're a kind guy, you're good to get along with, and that kind of thing.
Well, I'm a naturally friendly person. I like people. I like talking to people. I like connecting with people. So it was that part was easy for me. Honestly, the networking, it can be difficult for a lot of people. It can be difficult to play the game, as they say. But that part was not that hard for me. You can always find things to connect with people about. And when you do that, they remember you more. And so for me, it's a mix of a few things. It's obviously, playing your instrument well, and putting in the work that requires. But also you have to be able to get along with your fellow musicians, and you have to be able to, make sure that conductors and contractors and music directors remember you. Mm-hmm. And so, I think with those three things, I've done a pretty decent job, apparently, because I have this career now that I've cultivated. But yeah, the being friendly always came naturally to me, so that part was always easy.
Great. Have you had any, I guess, quasi fallbacks or doubts throughout your career? Just with getting work, have you had any moments of that kind of thing where you were a bit lost with your work?
Well, I actually, so after college, I actually didn't. It took me almost 10 years before I didn't need a day job. So I've worked at the American Girl place. I've worked at the Leonard Bernstein office. I've worked with ISO, obviously. I worked at Sam Ash for a few years. I've worked so many jobs before I could get to the point where my career was viable enough for me to not need a day job. And so, I did have those periods in time where I was worried that my playing career was over because I just wasn't getting any gigs. No one was calling me. But eventually someone would call me, and then I'd get back into things. And then from there, it just started to grow. So there have been a few patches where I felt the despair of not getting any calls and worrying if you are going to be able to do this in your life. But I think, having a day job is necessary until it isn't. And even then, some people do it anyway, because you just never know. But once you get to a point where you can do this for a living, that's a really good feeling. And it's one of the best feelings in the world. And I'm hoping I don't have to forget what that feels like.
No, wonderful. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll get to that shortly. But so I would like to learn more about what were your favorite experiences with working with people? Did you have any specific artists that were the highlights of your gig career?
Interesting. Well, I'll start by saying my experiences with ISO were very pleasant for me. Sometimes they were unpleasant. I won't get into that. But I learned a lot, and I learned a lot from really charismatic people who wanted to connect with their students and wanted them to learn the ins and outs of being a professional musician. And I think the best part about that organization was that when you get to the upper levels of it, at least when I was a student, you were treated as if you were a professional, and you were expected to be on time, expected to have your part learned, expected to be able to blend the way you needed to in the orchestra, and expected to listen to the conductor. And learning all those things at that age really helped me, because there are some people who don't do that stuff very well. And it, you can see it, but for some of us that did learn that stuff early on, it definitely helped. Other than that, there are a few people, there's, let's see if I can narrow this down. Let's see. There's, I used to do hopefully I still do. I used to play at a school twice a year with one of the brass quintets I'm in. And one of the graduation ceremonies we played, Wynton Marsalis was the keynote speaker.
Wow.
And he, yeah, right. And he played Bourbon Street Parade with us. And we had rehearsed it, we made sure we knew what we were doing, and he just jumped in and didn't miss a beat, and the energy in the room was palpable and everyone could feel it, and it was just such an upbeat atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the best memories that I'll always carry with me. That and probably the first time playing in Carnegie Hall. Those are two experiences I'll always hold on to. In terms of people, when you're a freelancer, you see so many different people. Mm-hmm. And that, some will connect with you, some won't. There's actually I used to do a cabaret every week in the meatpacking district, and the lead singer was the host of the show was a drag queen, and this person was the bubbliest, most sarcastic, witty host you could ever imagine. And those shows were so much fun for all of us because we played good music. We played good music with a good singer who knew how to command a room, and there were jokes too. So it was great. That was a good time. I enjoyed that part of my life. That only lasted about a year and a half, but yeah, things like that, kind of off the beaten path stuff is also really good because you're thrown into an unconventional musical environment, and you have to find different ways to thrive.
Right.
And some people thrive by just playing their instruments and staying quiet. We were encouraged to, do some hooting and hollering along with our host, and we did, and we had a great time doing it, and we connected with our audience every single week.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm sure that being in a very positive environment also helps things move along better in terms of getting along with people. I think is the most important thing to produce great results. So that's definitely something to learn. And also just dealing with people as well. How do you deal with people who you don't get along well in a situation?
Well, I did once play, I did one of those shows with a guest artist, who I will not name. I will say he's a trumpet player who has played for a long time with a prominent pop star. And to be honest, he was just kind of a jerk. And, he came into our world and decided that he could do what he wanted and he could say what he wanted, and it didn't matter because he was who he was. And all I did was, I just said, it's one night with this person, and then you never have to see him again. So, I'm also very good at getting along with people who are like that, because I just kind of detach myself and I say, I will be civil and friendly with you, but we will not connect on any other level. And that's going to be what our interaction is. So that's basically what I did.
Good. Great. Well, that's definitely to learn. What inspires you as a trumpet player currently?
Well, other trumpet players inspire me first and foremost. Namely, on the classical side, Bud Herseth, who is principal trumpet of the Chicago Symphony for 50 years. He inspires me. The way he developed that modern brass sound is, that's a kind of that's the way that I cultivate my own playing. You know, I try to emulate him as best I can. And on the jazz side, Clifford Brown is a big inspiration of mine. Clifford Brown only lived to see 25. He died in a car accident. But he made several albums before then, and he was widely celebrated as one of the best jazz trumpeters of his age. And I always think about what he would have produced had he lived until now. So he's another big inspiration. And other than that, I think what inspires me is seeing the people that I'm playing for either getting enjoyment out of the music that I'm playing or taking it upon themselves to learn more and to get involved and to really think about why they connect with this piece of art, and to try to see what other pieces of art they can connect with at the same time. And that kind of, when you can kind of inspire people to do that, it not only feels good, but it places a responsibility on your shoulders to hold yourself to a higher standard so that, you know, people don't try to connect with bad music.
Exactly. Well, I want to get into actually the pandemic now. So you've been shifting a little bit. You mentioned you've been doing some online things. Can you get a little more in depth about that? How you've been finding the time to be productive? Because you've literally came from having a full day nonstop traveling and going from place to place now to being at your home and being in a different environment altogether. So what are you doing now to be productive and still play? When this all started, I was rehearsing with the Manus Orchestra. They'd hired me for a concert, and I was rehearsing with an opera company. And sometimes I would have rehearsal at Manus, lessons, and then opera rehearsal, you know, in the same day. So now I'm still teaching. I'm teaching 5 of my students online. And that's going well. You know, at this point, I'm just trying to make sure that they are focusing on the fundamentals, because it's the perfect time to do so. So teaching some students. I am doing a few virtual performances. I'm doing some virtual performances that don't pay as well, just because I like to play and I want to be part of things, and I don't mind. And I know some people feel differently about that, and they totally have that right. You know, they have the right to say, I'm not doing anything unless it pays me. I'm a little different. And I don't feel that undermines artists in general. I do have my limits as to what I will do for free. But other than that, I've been doing, today I did I sat in on the Wagner Middle School trumpet class, because I have friends who teach there. And I've done some videos for Stuyvesant High School and Curtis High School and things like that. Some instructional videos, some here's what a trumpet does and how it works videos, you know, things like that. It's a diverse set of things that I've been doing, but it's kind of keeping me well-rounded and sane. So Oh, it's awesome that you're still educating, even with this limitation. I've been having lessons as well, and I've been teaching a little bit as well. And you do have to you do learn things a little bit differently through this platform. And in a way, I don't think it's a bad thing altogether. I think you do look things through a different perspective, and I think that's also important, because, you know, when you play, you cannot translate on the cello, for example, you cannot translate certain types of dynamic range, and there are those limitations, but then you focus on other areas, which I think is important. Do you find that same thing with the trumpet, that, you know, there's things you cannot express as much through this medium?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think the biggest challenge for me has been dynamic range, because the trumpet is such a direct sound that my mic picks it up so easily.
Right.
Even when I'm playing softly, it sounds like it's loud.
Absolutely, yeah. You have to adjust the gain and stuff like that.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And dealing with the internet connection doesn't help as well.
I've had more lessons than I can count at this point be disrupted by bad internet connections, for sure.
Yeah, we had to do things on the phone, which was going back to to the 70s. Well, I wasn't born, so. But anyway, great. Well, this is really, I'm really enjoying talking with you. There were just a couple more things about, like, how do you deal with being stuck on a deadline? Have you had moments where you literally have to be on a gig tomorrow and you have this crazy piece to learn? Like, how would you organize yourself to do it?
It's tough because there are so many factors. You know, you don't know what tempo the conductor's taking, or you don't know if you'll be able to, you know, switch off on a part with another player and say, hey, can you play this part? And I can play that part. So what I try to do in general is to prepare for the worst. I just say to myself, you know, you could show up there and you are the guy and you have to do it all. And so you should prepare for that. And usually that's not the case, thankfully. But if it is, and that has happened, you got to be prepared for that. So I try to, if I don't have enough time, if I'm jumping in for someone who dropped out of something or something like that, I will ask for music, I ask for references, I will ask for tempi, style, anything I can to make my life a little easier in that regard, so that I can just show up and do what I have to do. But that is very difficult, and it doesn't always end well.
I'm sure. I like that, preparing for the worst. You know, we don't know what circumstances we're jumping into. So right. I think that's a good philosophy for a lot of things. What would you share with aspiring musicians, composers? I'm interviewing artists as well, so I guess on a broad spectrum, but you could go as in depth as you'd like in that regard.
Well, you know, in today's arts world, where representation and recognition are important as much as the message you're giving through your art, I'd say that it's very important to find a balance between what you're trying to express and how you can find the best way to get that expression out to as many people as possible. Because I think when artists can focus solely on their art, and by that I mean, you know, be compensated enough that they can just be artists and not have to worry about something else, that's when I think art can flourish the most. And I say that as someone who can't do that. You know, I have to think about a lot of things, and I can't do just the things that I want to do as a musician. So you have to find a balance between expressing yourself and functionality, really. You know, your art has to be functional, your art has to be practical, it has to be pragmatic. So you have to find a good balance between that. The other thing is network. People have to know who you are if they're going to consume your art.
Right.
You know, people have to remember you. The ones that have consumed your art and like you have to remind them that you're there and that they want to consume more of your art. So I think those are the most important things, finding that soul work balance, so to speak, and being able to promote yourself.
Got it. And even now you could be still networking with people. People have all the time in the world now. So in a way you could use this time to your advantage. Like right now I'm speaking with you, and right now we wouldn't even have this opportunity to probably talk because you'd be busy right now. And I'm sure other people that I'll be interviewing, you know, now is the time. So it's great that we, you know, in a way it's an unfortunate situation, but we're making the most of it.
Exactly.
But I really enjoyed speaking with you, Clyde, and thank you for your time. Where could people find your you have like a YouTube website, Instagram, things like that?
I will update this. I'm in the process of making a website. It is one of the things that I have slacked on, admittedly. And this is coming from a guy who just talked a lot about networking. So that is a work in progress, but I will get that out to you as soon as I can. But you can find me on Facebook, Clyde Daley, ClydeDaley, and on Instagram at Trumpet Clyde. Trumpet CLYDE. So that's where you can find me. There are videos of my playing on both platforms. But the website will be coming soon.
Awesome. Well, sounds good. Thank you so much, Clyde. It's really been a pleasure getting to catch up with you a little bit and hear about what you've been doing. And And hope you make it through this pandemic. We'll get through this together, I'm sure.
You too. It's good to see you. Good to hear from you, my friend.
Good to see you too. And hopefully we could play a gig when this is over.
I sincerely hope we do. I really do.